Today, since I'm gone, you're going to watch a video going over your new trig functions that you're going to learn today. First thing that I need you to do is go ahead and fill in this do now, and then pause the video so you have a chance to actually solve it. Once everyone has had a chance to solve it is when you should play it again and we can go over it. Okay, so the first thing you should think about in this problem is where you can actually start the problem at. When looking at this, you have two triangles. You have one on the bottom that's a 30, 60, 90, and you have one on top that is a 45, 45, 90. So you know your ratios to work in each of these based on your parent triangles. When looking at this, the one you can actually work in is this bottom one because you know the side length of 18. So you cannot start on the top, you have to start on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is just cover it up so you can only see the bottom one right now. When marking your triangle, across from your 30 always goes your 1. This is 30, and this one's 90. This is your 60, which means across from my 60 is my root 3. Then your hypotenuse is always your 2 in a 30, 60, 90. To solve for your missing sides, then, we're going to start by setting up our ratios. So I'm going to start with this one is z over 1 has to equal 18 over root 3. Remember with this, since it's over 1, this is technically the problem you don't have to cross multiply because your z is already alone. Anything divided by 1 is just that same thing. However, we do have to simplify this part right here by rationalizing it because you are not allowed to have a radical in the denominator. To rationalize, you always multiply by the radical in the bottom. So multiply by root 3. 18 times root 3 just gives you 18 root 3. On the bottom, root 3 times root 3 is root 9, which is 3. Always check if you can simplify it. 18 over 3 does in fact divide, so this gives you 6 root 3. So I'm going to fill that in on the line where it goes. While z is the only side labeled, you do need to find this side because it is the one shared between the two triangles. So I'm just going to put a w here so that we can solve it. Set this one up, w over 2. You can use 18 again if you want, so 18 over root 3. You will cross multiply this and get w root 3 is equal to 36. When you divide, w is equal to 36 over root 3. Again, you're going to rationalize. You will get 36 root 3 over 3. 36 divided by 3 is 12 root 3. You will not necessarily fill that in on a line here. Where you will fill that in, if I change this around so we can only see the top one, that is the length of this side. Now we can switch triangles, and now we can look at just this top one so I can find x and y. Since this is a 45, 45, 90, here's my 1, and my root 2. We know that x and y are the same, so you're really just picking one of them to set up and solve. So I can do x over 1 equals 12 root 3 over root 2. Again, x is really already by itself, so we're going to start by rationalizing this. Multiply by root 2 over root 2. Top, you're going to get 12 root 6, because the 3 times 2 gives you 6. And on the bottom, root 2 times root 2 is root 4, which is just 2. You absolutely can simplify this problem. We have 12 over 2 right here that are both our normal numbers and they're not in radicals. So this gives you 6 root 6. You know that that's x, which means you also know it's y. So I can go back now and fill in my 6 root 6 and my other 6 root 6. Feel free to pause this, rewind, do whatever you need. Make sure you have this filled in correctly in your notebook. Do not have an incorrect example in your notebook. If you made a mistake, go back and fix it, and then proceed with the lesson once everyone has it correct. We will go over our homework answers next time. Go ahead, I'm going to need one person from every table. Bring up the homework papers from your table so that I can stamp them. I need another person from each table to help return homework. So go to the back bin and get your homework out of there and return it to everyone. Go ahead and pause the video until that is finished. So I need the new homework collected, and then I need you to go to the back bin and return all the homework in the homework outbox for your class. That should be taken care of now. Here's your title. It should already be on top of your page. Today we're going to start trigonometry, and you're going to learn what trigonometric ratios are, and you're going to learn how to find sides using your trig ratios. First thing we're going to talk about, because you've never done this before, is what is trig? Trig is the study of right triangles and the relationship between their sides and angles. With trig, we have three different ratios that we talk about that will be able to find us any set of work with any set of sides we want to find any angles, any sides we can possibly do. So we're going to go over all of that for the next few days. But first I have to teach you what these ratios are called and which sides they compare. Your first of three trig ratios is called sine. It is spelled S-I-N-E, however we abbreviate it as S-I-N on your calculator. We always take the sine of an angle. So for example, I might be talking about angle A right here. So this is always an angle. That is equal to the ratio of two sets of sides. The sides we use for sine is your opposite leg, and we compare that to the hypotenuse. Okay, so you would in theory know the lengths of at least one of these sides or one of the angles, and this ratio lets you set up an equation. In our example down here, opposite of angle A is down here at the bottom. This is your side. That would be opposite of A. Your hypotenuse is going to be always the same. It's across from your right angle, so this would be my hypotenuse. Okay, so sine is the ratio of those two side lengths. Your second one is called cosine, which we abbreviate to COS. That's probably what you see on your calculator. And that is equal to the ratio of your adjacent leg over your hypotenuse. So it's the same idea. You're comparing, based on some angle, you're comparing your adjacent leg to your hypotenuse. Looking at this picture again, adjacent to angle A is going to be this side B right here. Make sure these have to be legs, which is why your hypotenuse is not an adjacent. While it is next to A, it's the hypotenuse, so that wins out. But this is the adjacent leg of side A, or of angle A. Your last ratio then is called tangent. On your calculator, that should be abbreviated as TAN. Again, it is always of an angle. And tangent is the ratio of your opposite leg over your adjacent leg. These three ratios you absolutely have to know. This is what all of trig is based on. If you look at your reference sheet at the very front of your notebook, all three are written there. So you do not necessarily have to memorize them. However, the better you know them, the easier these problems are. So what we give you is an acronym. And this acronym is usually the way math teachers help their kids remember what they're doing. And the acronym is called SOHCAHTOA. It is super important that you spell this right. Okay, so do double check it when you're writing it. But SOHCAHTOA tells you, this first letter of each of them tells you what trig ratio it is. So here I have sine. And the O and the H tells you that sine is equal to your opposite over your hypotenuse, which is exactly what we wrote above. The C, similar idea, tells you that cosine is equal to your adjacent over your hypotenuse. And tangent is equal to your opposite over your adjacent. The first letter is always the one that goes on top of your fraction. The second one's always the one on bottom. Please make sure you have that correctly. This is something that you will use all throughout the chapter. You'll probably write it on at your test even when you get it then. So make sure you have it correctly down. Okay, what we're going to do is just work on filling in some trig ratios based on a given triangle. To find any trig ratios, you are setting up the fractions of the sides. We're going to do it one of the angles at a time. First thing you do need to find, though, is this missing side. If you have two sides in a right triangle, remember you can always find the third using the Pythagorean theorem. So we can do 9 squared plus 12 squared equals x squared. This will give you 255 equals x squared, 225, I apologize. And then x is 15. We are going to set it up one side at a time. When you do this, for sine, I'm going to write my acronym at the top. I always do. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so we need to figure out which angle we're talking about. Opposite of angle W is my 12. So this is my O. Some people it helps to write the O there. So the top of my sine fraction is going to be the 12. The hypotenuse of this triangle, across from your right angle, is the 15. So my sine of angle W is 12 over 15, which when you simplify, that gives you 4 over 5. For cosine, same idea, but now you're doing adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent leg to angle W is this 9 right here. So I'm just going to put an A there to help me remember that. So cosine is equal to 9 over 15. We can divide up 3 out of each of those, so this is 3 over 5. They're going to give me fractions for all of these answers, so just divide them like this. It's perfect. For tangent, same idea again. It is O over A. If you've already labeled them, it makes it even easier. So this is 12 over 9, which simplifies down to 4 over 3. Okay, so these are the correct trig ratios for angle W. What we're going to do next, then, is figure out the trig ratios for angle X, which changes a few things around. When we're looking at this, opposite of angle X is now the 9. Adjacent to angle X, the adjacent leg, is this one right here, the 12. So these will actually flip-flop when you switch angles, which is totally fine. Your hypotenuse will always stay the same. Go ahead and try to set up these three ratios for angle X using your new letters. For sine, O over H gives you 9 over 15, which simplifies down to 3 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 12 over 15, which is equal to 4 over 5. And then tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent, which is 9 over 12, or 3 over 4. When you get into trig, we're going to talk about more of the special relationships that happen here. For now, what's super important is that you know your acronym, that you can label OA and H for any of your sides, and then you can set up your ratios based on that. What we're going to do next is actually be able to solve some problems to find our missing side. So I'm going to give you some steps. There are 4 steps total. I'm also going to show you how to do this in your calculator. You are not going to be able to solve these problems without a calculator. So you will have to have a calculator. So right now I need everyone to have a calculator that you will actually be able to use on the test in your hand. So if you need to pause the video to go ahead and go grab graphing calculators from the back, that is fine. Please make sure they are returned before the end of the block. They do not get to leave my room. Remember, I am still missing 2, so if you know where those are, I need them back as soon as possible. Okay, so now the calculator on our desk, and we are ready to work with these. I'm going to show you both how to use this calculator, and I'll hopefully be able to talk you through your other ones as well, and your iPhones and your Android phones. So, first step for finding a missing side using your trig. You are first, going to label your O, your A, and your H on your triangle. O is your opposite side, A is your adjacent side, and H is your hypotenuse. You are doing that based on the angle that I have labeled. So O from the 28 is X. A from the 28 is this base right here, the other leg. And the 19 is your hypotenuse. Once you have labeled that correctly, you are going to choose a trig ratio based on what you were given. So you were using your SOHCAHTOA. Okay, and based on, so they gave me the 19, and they want to know the x. So those are the two that I actually care about. Since those are my O and my H, I'm going to use sine. So I just start to fill in that sine has to equal O over H. It gives you a basis to fill into. Okay, once you have picked that, oopsies, keep doing that, you are going to plug your angle and your sides into your equation. Remember that you always do your sine, cosine, or tangent of an angle. So this 28 is going to go with sine. O, if you've already labeled it, it makes it super easy, is your x, and H is the 19. Oopsies, not 18. When you solve these, I'm going to show you why as we go through a couple examples. I think of this as cross multiplying because you have a fraction. Okay, remember sine's technically over 1 then. When you cross multiply, 1 times x gives you x. When we cross multiply this, I always write my normal number in front so that you know what order you're doing it in. 19 times sine of 28. The danger with writing it at the back, you might accidentally multiply this sine first. Okay, but once you have this written, this becomes what you're going to type in your calculator. I never round in the middle of the problem, so I always figure out what I'm going to type in my calculator first. On your calculator, the first thing you have to do, no matter what calculator you have, is make sure it is in the correct mode. We have two different ways that we measure angles, and so you have to make sure that your calculator is doing it in the correct way. On mine, on the graphing calculators, you're going to go over here and you're going to click the mode button. The third line down, you need to check if you look at that third line and your radians is darked in like it shows here, then it is in the wrong mode. You need to go push the arrows down twice until you're highlighting that row, click over to the right, and click enter. Degree needs to be darked in. If you have other calculators, it should be a similar process. On many of them, if it is, there's usually a mode button that helps you find it, or a DRG button, and you need to make sure degree is what is selected. Otherwise, you will be doing this in the wrong unit. Once you have that, you're going to quit and go back to the main page. And then we're just going to type in 19 times the sine of 28. I put parentheses around everything I can and then hit enter. This is what you should get out of your calculator. I need to make sure that everyone right now is typing that incorrectly. So if you do not get 8.9, you need to raise your hand and make sure that you have checked that you're in the right mode. If you need help, raise your hand, and we can go from there. Once everyone has that correct, we're going to go ahead and try a different problem. So please make sure that you check right now that your answer is correct and your calculator gave you the right answer. Otherwise, we need to look and make sure it's in the correct mode. Okay, once that one's taken care of, go ahead and write this one down. You need to begin by labeling your OA and H and making sure you have that filled in correctly. So pause the video until you have had a chance to do that. Now that you've tried that, if this is my angle, again, I always just label on my sides right away. Some people find it easiest to label their hypotenuse first. So across from my right angle, this is always my hypotenuse no matter what. Then from my 55, this is opposite, and the 8 is adjacent. The 8 is directly next to it. For picking your trig ratio, I look at, okay, here's my x, and that's an O, and here's the number side they gave me, which is an A, which tells me over here that I need to use tangent. So I'm just going to set up my generic equation. Tangent equals O over A. When you're plugging it in then, it's the tangent of 55 equals x over 8. When you go to cross multiply this problem, x from here gives you 8 times the tangent of 55. And you go ahead and type that in on your calculator. Again, I just type everything in at once. Tangent, or 8 times tangent of 55 gives you 11.4. Again, if you are not getting that number out of your calculator, you need to raise your hand so that we can make sure we fix that. Work with your classmates to help make sure everyone's calculator's in the correct mode and that you're typing things in properly. Use the screen that I've shown you up here to kind of help with that as well. Draw this one down, write this one down, and then go ahead and give it a try as well. And then this one is a little bit different, which is why I am going to show you how to do this as well. The idea stays the same at the beginning, it's just a little bit of a change down here when you cross multiply. So label each of your sides, figure out which trig ratio we're talking about, and try to set that up, and then go ahead and push play again. Okay, so when you start this one, you're going to label your sides, like I said. Opposite of the 43 is your O. Adjacent to this 43 is your A, and then your hypotenuse is across from the right angle, so that's your H. With this problem, again, figure out what I've marked for you. So I have given you your A and I have asked for your H. Those are the ones we're going to use. If you look back at your acronym, CAH, so we are going to use cosine. So cosine equals A over H, and then I'm going to plug everything in. So cosine of 43 is equal to 36 over x. Now, when I go to cross multiply this problem, this is what changes. So I'm doing 1 times 36, which is 36, and x times the cosine of 43. Okay, so that it will sometimes happen. Now, when you get this problem, think about what you would normally do anyways. If this said 2x equals 36, you would tell me to divide. So even though this is cosine, you are still going to divide this number. Okay, so those are going to cross off, and you're going to get x equals 36 divided by the cosine of 43. When you type that in your calculator, you can do 36 divided by cosine of 43 and hit enter. Okay, you should get 49.2 out of your calculator. If you do not get that, again, please let us know so that we can help you. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is to make sure you can do this correctly on your cell phone as well, because while you can't use that on a test, I know many of you will do that on your homework. If you have an Apple phone on your calculator, you're going to have to turn your cell phone sideways. One thing to check and make sure is that your calculator is in degrees, just like before. So what we're going to do is I'll just make up a number. If we do cosine of 87, this is the decimal you should get, so that 0.052335, so on. On your iPhone, you're going to have to type the angle first. So you're going to type 87 and then hit cosine. If it gives you that decimal, your calculator's in the right mode. If it does not, look in the bottom left hand of your calculator. There should be a button that says either DEG or RAD. Click it if it did not give you this decimal, and then try again. So again, do 87 cosine and make sure you get that decimal out of it. On most Android cell phones, again, you're going to have to turn your phone sideways, but you do not type your angle first. You are going to type it like this, and you're going to do cosine 87, and you'll get that number out. Again, double check your mode. It is not as easy to double check on Androids because all your phones are different. If it does not come out as this exact decimal, try to find how you switch your mode on your specific model. Other than that, you're going to have the rest of the time to work on your homework.